Hima, what is taking number first? By you. You actually say take the number give me.
Guys, now I'm tired. I'll go on a date with whoever gets here first.
Princess, really? Okay, I come.
Shut up!
Mame, for the meeting, I'm watching. Boss, fill my tank with Super XP Raw 95.
Fill up with Super XP Raw 95 and Diesel XP high performance products from Goyle.
Sorry, Tony got here first, so I'm stepping with him.
Oh, cut him. Hey, go for mommy.
Choose Super XP Raw 95 and Diesel XP for an energizing driving experience. Always go for Goyle Super XP Raw 95. Go.
I promise on my honor to be a better leader every day, faithful and loyal to my country, organization and fellow team members, countrymen and women. I pledge myself to remain true to the core values of integrity and self-discipline through my daily choices and actions. My mind is alert, focused at all times. I shall show respect to everyone always and every time. I remain a better leader and team player always. So I pledge.
Welcome back, cherished viewers and listeners. This is the Leadership 360 program on Metro TV. We are live on DSTV channel 277, live on Facebook at Metro TV Ghana, and live on VOL radio, online radio. You can watch us every Thursday and Saturday at 1400 hours and on Saturday 1300 hours. Today, we're going to talk about leadership and culture, as indicated in my intro. But I also mentioned that we have had, for the past 10 weeks, we have had very exciting episodes. If you want to catch a glimpse or a listen of these previous episodes, just go to my YouTube channel, Dr. Victor Abbey, and you get all the insightful submissions by the guests and myself, and we continue to learn while we learn, unlearn, and relearn to accelerate the process of our development driven by leadership. Today is the opportunity to examine the topic leadership and culture. It's been said that leadership is the denominator of culture across every society. Regardless of the level of development, leadership determines the either positivity or negativity nature of culture. It's also said in strategy that culture eats strategy for breakfast. To help us dissect this topic today is someone who has been on this program, the first guest on this Leadership 360 program. He is a known face, but it's very important that I give him an introduction for us to know the caliber of person we are going to have on set today. He is a multifaceted professional banker, leadership and strategy consultant, and risk and international geopolitical affairs analyst with over 20 years of practice. He is currently the resident enterprise risk manager at Goyle PLC, an alumnus of University of Cape Coast, University of Wales in the UK, where he obtained his MBA, the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, where he obtained MSc Defense and International Politics, a degree. He also pursued a certificate course in Geneva Center for Security Policy, Wits University in South Africa, and Columbia University in the USA, where he obtained leadership training certificate. His profile goes on and on and on and on. Just to cut it short, cherished viewers, our guest for today is Mr. Mark Kwaku Obeng-Appau. Kwaku,
thank you.
You're welcome
Dog.
to
Thank
the
you.
Leadership
Pleasure is mine.
Show.
Good to see you.
It's great having you back.
Exactly, yeah.
Today, you're going to help us have a more better understanding of our leadership discourse.
That's right.
Vis-a-vis culture.
Good.
Now, just to set the tone for our discussion, permit me to say, just go back a bit to my introductory remarks, that leadership remains the most critical denominator of culture in every society. And it's also said that without culture, nothing moves. Everything is driven by culture, which is necessitated by leadership or shaped by leadership. It's also said that the purpose of leadership actually is to create a culture that will facilitate attainment of a task or a shared goal. In that case, what it means is that leadership must create a desirable culture at all times. As we are in, the world keeps changing every day, different leadership cultures are required in order to, pave way for development.
That's right.
So let's contextualize the discussion by first of all touching on what is culture.
Very good.
What is culture?
Thank you, Dog. I think my regards to your cherished viewers, and also thank you for the opportunity. Thank my MD and the management staff for allowing me to use their time to be here. Number one, I think that straight to the issues is that leadership is a very fluid concept, and so you need to have leadership looked at from about a couple of lenses. Number one, the first lens is that for anybody doing medical science or for anybody doing laboratory work, or so, just to examine what your illness is when you go to your doctor, obviously they have what they call culture, and that is unique to the medical field.
Exactly.
And also then you begin to look at culture from what we call the socio-anthropological viewpoint, which is why we are here.
Exactly.
And the socio-anthropological viewpoint of culture actually looks at, the set of a group of people's set of values, their behaviors, their beliefs, their language sometimes, and, their ceremony, their custom, the food they eat, the music they dance to, and their orientation actually as to how they perceive the world. That would be the culture and the discussion at this point. So, for example, that leads us into Western culture, military culture, corporate culture, etc., 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 black or African culture, and so on and so forth. But quick one is that because culture is a very elaborate concept, culture has a couple of breakdowns. Culture can be progressive, culture can be, if you like, static, and culture can also be retrogressive. So whichever way it is, snapshots, that is culture for you.
So culture basically has to do with the way people behave, their belief systems, the way they approach things or life as a whole, and what pertains within the community defines their culture.
Exactly.
All right. So why is it significant when it comes to leadership? What has that got? If a way of life or a way of people or their belief system, what has leadership got to do with that?
It is important to establish that leadership has been looked or has been extensively discussed here. The elementary side of leadership has gone on. This is the 10th or the 11th edition. And you will notice that in all the conversations you've had, leadership is a service, leadership is rallying people to deliver, to work, organize people in the society, in the corporate world, in the global arena, in the military, in the church. So leadership is good. It's actually an amazing concept to understand. But you see, this question raises a fundamental point. It's like the egg and the chicken conversation.
Okay.
Which one drives which one first, and that sort of intellectual conversation.
We actually going to touch on
yes,
that.
Good.
So why is it so significant that leadership pays attention to culture?
It is important because you see, the culture, as I have said, without going into a very academic definition, but based on the pure side, the people's behavior, the people's perception, the people's drive towards work, towards society, towards progress and all that. If you were a leader, the core agenda of every leader is to rally people, to inspire people or teams to deliver the basic goods of society or corporate world. So if you understand the culture of a people, it is important that whether you will be a very good leader or otherwise, it depends on your maturity to understand the behavioral pattern or the set of elements that define a team or a group of people. Then you become a very good leader. So it is important that for either effective leader, positive leadership or so on, or across board, you must understand the culture very, very extensively.
Okay. That's quite interesting. That leads me back to the initial comments or commentary that I passed, that leadership is the critical denominator of culture. How does leadership shape culture, and or vice versa? How does culture shape leadership?
Good. It does, and I am inclined to support the initial remarks by one development scholar. You know, Duran Asimoglu has written this big, very amazing book that examines what we call the leadership hypothesis, the culture hypothesis, and also the institutional hypothesis. This book is, you know, why nations fail. And when you go deeper into that book, you will see. And for purposes of this conversation, where I find it interesting is the culture part. He argues very extensively that culture is so important that it drives development. So that if you recall in my introduction, I said culture can either be positive or negative. It can also be progressive, static, or regressive.
Exactly.
Now, what it means is that where you have a positive or progressive culture, then there is evidence that you know, prosperity, corporate sustainability, societal progress can be assured. Where the people have very negative or regressive culture, then you can also you can assume that, look, nothing gets done. Society never progresses. And this is anchored empirically in a lot of documentations across, you know, scholarship.
Okay.
That leadership and culture are virtually, they go in a direct, direct relationship, if you like.
All right. So, am I right if I say that in your previous submission on this show, where we treated leadership by example, you indicated that leaders must walk the talk, and not just talk the talk.
That's right.
So their behavior, their attitude translates into shaping the culture.
Yeah.
So that is one of the significant reasons why leaders must pay attention to the way they behave, the way they handle issues within their space at any point in time. So then, it means that interchangeably, culture can shape leadership style, and leadership can shape culture as well.
For real, and there is no ambiguity about that. I think before I press on that button, let me take you to, let's just break culture a bit down and then come closer to your question. Number one, as we have said, culture is so broad. You have Western culture, you have that. Let's just situate the conversation for purposes of contextual correctness. The African culture.
All right.
Exactly. So I'm not sure what is ahead of us, but when you pick up the African culture is draped, and this is even diverse though, but just for purposes of this conversation, African culture is draped in myth, mythology. African culture is actually characterized by, it's hierarchical. African culture is done, oral. It's not documented. For a very long time, African culture was not documented. So all you hear is that myth. Everything is shrouded in mystery. Don't ask questions. Don't do that. As you even go further into African culture, I have said it is very hierarchical. It is power-centric because of our traditional setting and the traditional environment. That sort of narrative in the Africanness of our culture builds what we call, if you are young, don't ask too many questions. Take what exactly you hear and move on. It's also gender bias. It can be largely gender bias where women belong to a certain arena and men. So you see the chauvinistic nature of that kind of culture, which has today fed into what I call when the emperor is naked, don't talk about it. So we don't talk. It's a metaphorical way to say, don't give feedback to your leaders. If you remember, part of walking the talk, is that leaders must be humble and they must also get feedback. So culture, that is where culture comes in. When you modernize your culture to a point where it becomes so progressive, we'll get there, then you are very likely to get progress and prosperity and sustainability, because the changing environment requires that culture and leadership move in tandem.
So again, it goes back to the point that, in fact, viewers, this topic is so broad, but we're trying our best to, narrow it down to the basics for all of us to understand. It boils down to the fact that leadership, in order to be progressive and development-oriented, must pay attention to changing times.
That's right.
So as to shape the culture in a way that will be more beneficial to the society in which it operates. So all the features of the African culture that you mentioned, chauvinistic nature of it, don't say it, see no evil, hear no evil,
talk no evil.
Talk no evil. Leaders must begin to pay attention to those things, and that is some of the things I picked from your submissions. Great submissions, Kwaku.
Exactly.
Now, one of our ardent viewers of this program, seeing the flyer, said that the culture of every human society or gathering is fundamentally shaped by the behavior or behaviors of leaders who are willing to tolerate worse behaviors. So the tolerance of worse behavior also largely contributes to shaping or playing down on culture. What is your view?
My view is that at the periphery, I may agree, because the word tolerance. But tolerance, when you break it down, I would rather say accommodate. Because you see, leadership is also, the leadership is a cause and effect. So if the behavior of your teammates, for purposes of this conversation, is at variance with your goal and your values as a society, as a corporation, as a military institution, or as a nation, you cannot accept, you cannot tolerate that, but you can accommodate it. And then, of course, accommodation is more bigger because it allows you room to be positive-minded, to change course, and to redirect followers to realign. Because leadership sits on a culture. A culture drilled down is made up of, it's a set of elements. There are too many elements in a set. So you won't expect, and this is a socio-anthropological arena. So not all your subjects or teammates or subordinates are going to behave harmoniously. There will be heterogeneity, there will be diversity. How you are able to mature enough to deal with diversity as a leader, it will define your tolerance level. Because obviously there are too many areas in leadership or in rallying people around where certain things would not be tolerated the way it may have been construed.
Right.
But I largely agree. I agree in part.
All right. So again, from your submission so far, am I okay if I state that in every leadership drive, one must always look out for diversity within the team? And while looking for that, you must be conscious of the cultural background or socio-cultural background of the team members.
Absolutely.
Because each individual has a certain behavioral trait that he or she brings on board. And so leaders must be conscious of that. Now, if you look at our society today, the modern society, generally speaking, where you can best describe it as globalization, where what happens in the US today is known within minutes in Africa or in the village Nakpanduri or anywhere. Sorry, Nakpanduri, I don't mean anything negative. A remote area like that will get to know in no time.
Yeah.
Meaning that culture within the smallest community can be shaped by happenings around the world as well.
Absolutely.
How do leaders make sure that to a very large extent happenings elsewhere are utilized in shaping the culture that they have?
Amazing stuff. Remember, I think oftentimes when we're talking about these things, people think, oh, yeah, but let's understand. As far back as in the 1920s, in the Western world, even in the Western world, just one case study, women were not allowed to vote. Yes, 1920 all the way to before the war era in the 1930s and all that. Women in most Western societies where they lecture us today about democracy were not allowed to vote. What that means is that it has taken time. You use what we call social changes, the concept of social change to modernize your culture as leaders. So you are using education. And remember, social changes occur all around 360 degrees. This is not 365. This is 360 degrees. The environment is evolving all the time. The World Bank has argued over and again that when a society opens up its diversity landscape, GDP quadrupled or so and so forth. Think about it. If we have a culture that at some point is perceived to be out of whack with progress, you would need to use science. You need to use education. Thank God today, thank goodness, technology is driving the world. So if you are a leader, you must also scan the environment, 365, perhaps 700 degrees, to understand that too many things are happening around diversity. And so through education, through conversation, through discussions like what we have in here, and through science, making science and technology, society, leaders, and leadership can use all these levers to transform society, culture. And once culture is transformed, culture then becomes very progressive. And progressive culture, as we said, sine qua non, would definitely lead to progress.
All right.
That's right.
I'm quite enjoying the conversation, but still conscious of time, though. I
know.
believe the cherished viewers are equally enjoying it. Before, we're going to talk specifically about corporate culture as well. But before we get to that space, let me find out from you. Now, an individual striving to get into leadership role from a community, what are some of the things that the individual needs to remind himself or be conscious of?
Very good question. We have said, and thank you, Doug, that leadership has no locational limitation. So this question is core to that conversation.
Exactly.
And if wherever you are in the most obscurest of corners in Ghana or Africa or everywhere, if you really want to, you are aspiring to leadership, you can do what we call community leadership. Look, Barack Obama became a president from nowhere. He never ran any corporation, which is typical of most American CEOs. He never was in Congress. All he did was that he was a community organizer. Community organizer would help you, number one, understand your own people very well. Your people everywhere, in every corner, are diverse. Women, young, older people, different tribe in Ghana, lovely people, and then everywhere in Nigeria or in Cote d'Ivoire, you begin to do community service. As you do community service, you mature. My former boss, Prince Kofi Amwabin, said, time. If you don't respect time, you have failed. And that is also a major issue of our culture as a people. Look, leaders will ask you that there's a conference. Most people will go and sit down, the audience will sit down, and the actors or the key actors, it will take them an hour or two or more, and people are still running very late. And often it's done without any apology, and it's repeated over and over and over. Time becomes a very funny issue to be raised here. But if you begin to quantify the effect of time lost, you would understand perhaps why we are also backward on the progress line. So community leadership is so important. You mature, you respect people, you respect time, you hug people, you love them, and all put together, it builds your, what we call your mindset. Build a smart, matured mindset, good heart, and then you'll be able to lead to the international arena.
So by so doing, I guess you have to be selfless in all this, because in order to serve your people well and respect them, you must not be self-centered. You must look at the other side of the coin at all times.
That is rudely, that is the heart of servant leadership. If you talked about it whilst I wasn't watching, the whole essence of servant leadership is to be selfless.
Exactly.
That is it.
Okay. So, viewers, we are still on the conversation, leadership and culture. It's amazing how we are getting to understand the role of culture in leadership. Leadership builds culture. Leadership drives culture. Leadership shapes culture. Leadership is shaped by culture itself. So, as we thrive every day in our leadership effort to make life better, we need to understand that culture is there watching us. Our own behavior, our attitudes, our values that we subscribe to. Like Kwaku mentioned, time management is critical. How do you cope with time? How do you behave towards time? When meetings are called and you are to be there with your team members as a leader, do you wait for everybody to be there and you come later because you feel you are the leader? No, you are shaping a culture that may turn around to bite you.
Absolutely.
Your team members are likely to follow or emulate that behavior, and when they play it back to you, you may not be too, comfortable, or it may not be amusing to you. So we need to be conscious of the values we subscribe to and the behavior we put up. Kwaku, I can go on and on and on and on, but this is one key question I want to ask. When you are placed in a leadership position or leadership role within your team, be it at the community level, organizational level, national level, international level, what are some of the key things that one need to, remind him or herself of in order to succeed in that role? You have mentioned basically about, community service and all that, but my question has to do with, you have just been given that role to play. Diversity is eminent within such spaces. What are some of the things you need? Do you have to look at your own self, where you are coming from, the culture that shaped you, and the culture of the entire team as well, in your drive towards effective leadership?
You must do that. It's necessary to do that, what we call self-intro inspection.
Exactly.
You must always, as humble. But by the way, if we were given a position either in the office or in government or anywhere else, the first thing to understand that environment is temporal. In fact, occupying a leadership position is not permanent. Nobody is born into a permanent position. You are there today, in the next 4 years or so, or the next 2, it's all over. Just as our lives. I remember one commentator said, life the frailties of mankind. Leadership and offices and positions are there today. In the next twinkle of an eye, an external event or so will tip you off and you are not there. So once you assume an office, whether it is smaller, micro, bigger, or prestigious, one, examine yourself, self-introspection, and understand that it is also not the end to it, and that it's only a process to do something, a means to an end, and not an end to a means. And that means you must be guided by humility, utmost humility. If you are not humble to understand these issues I'm talking about, then you assume the cocky, the chauvinistic nature I talked about earlier. And then you once you become very chauvinistic and egoistical, very proud, you allow what we call the sycophants to come closer to you and begin to actually blackmail ordinarily positive people. Because all then you would be wanting is that you would want to hear what you want to hear. And that you won't, your leadership behavior or trait will not allow you to calibrate, to understand that, look, these guys around me will poison everybody, and ultimately before you see the next day, they will be bootlickers. They will be looking for food and cars and properties to fill the humanness of themselves, and not because they want you to succeed. So it's a very tricky one when you assume any office and you don't have the maturity. Your propensity to collapse under those circumstances is very high.
So, thank you. What it means is the individual must be intentional about understanding the leadership role that he or she is given.
Leadership is intentional.
You must be intentional about it. Yes. Thank you. Viewers, we have a lot to talk about, but at this point, we shall take a quick break, and when we are back, we shall continue the conversation where we'll shift to organizational culture and leadership.
Guys, now I'm tired. I'll go on a date with whoever gets here first.
Princess, really?
Okay, I come.
Shut up!
Boss, fill my tank with Super XP Raw 95.
Well up with Super XP Raw 95 and Diesel XP high performance products from Goyle.
Sorry, Tony got here first, so I'm stepping with him.
Oh, cut him.
Hey, go for a
Choose Super XP Raw 95 and Diesel XP for an energizing driving experience. Always go for Goyle Super XP Raw 95. Go.
Welcome back, cherished viewers. So far, so good. Very insightful conversation around leadership and culture, where we've spoken about the fact that leadership is the denominator of culture, and culture also shapes leadership to a very large extent. So it's so intertwined to the extent that one cannot do away with the other without any problem. And they must go together, they must work in tandem if we are to achieve any success within our spaces, within our community, and within our businesses. So that brings us to the discourse around organizational culture.
That's right.
So, Kwaku, every organization, like every human entity or society,
That's right.
operates with culture.
Yes.
Leaders operate within organizations. Culture is shaped within organizations by leaders.
Yes.
What are some of the key things or factors that leaders, organizational leaders, need to pay attention to when it comes to organizational culture, shaping the organizational culture that will inure in the long run to the benefit of the
amazing question.
Yeah.
And quick one to that. There is this funny or interesting Darwinian concept where he says that, society influences leadership, and leadership also influences society. And it is important. When we say society, we deepen that category of definition to include corporate environment. Why corporate environment? Corporate environment or organizations are so important because society is productivity, society's employment, society's progress, society's worth and wealth are all largely driven by organizations. So organizational culture, which I alluded to in my intro, becomes very, very important. As a leader, you see, one thing leadership must understand, or we must understand in leadership, is the vision. Okay? Your sight. Vision is simply your sight as a leader. I remember in corporate history.
To put it right for the benefit of those who may focus on, it's not seeing, it's about insight. Insight into the future,
exactly,
so to speak. All right,
I appreciate that. Insight into the future.
Exactly.
What do you aspire as a leader? And you remember, part of the definition or explanation of a culture includes people's perception.
Exactly.
The leader's perception in an organization as where they want to take the organization to. So, for example, you would see in leadership that the American leadership narrative dominates the global leadership conversation in the corporate environment. Because you look, Jack Welch and all these giants who developed General Electric, General Motors, etc., till today, they were not made from the skies. They were all human beings from cultural environment that assumed the helms of company or either created their own company and said to themselves, no, we must be global giants. So they had foresight and they had deeper vision. So when you were a leader and you're operating in Ghana or anywhere in Africa, Nigeria, and you must also have a very, futurist. You must have a vision. You must have foresight. If you assume an office today, in the next 5-10 years, where do you want to take your organization to? Vision. Now, if you don't have vision, you settle for the what we call in Ghana nokofio. So all you are interested is crumbs, and you quickly want to amass wealth and get cars and get bungalows and you and your children, and that is it. That type of leadership, self-centeredness, will be at play very well. So if you go off that trajectory or that tangent, then you have a vision. You must develop people. You must develop the younger ones, very good succession planning, no matter how that is done. Education, mentoring, tutoring, or giving people opportunity to learn and get their hands wet on the job. Because we have said leadership is not a title. In fact, many CEOs all over the world, Fortune 500, many of them have hardly even get masters and sometimes have PhDs. Sometimes first degree. Then 60s and 50s, military army officers who had come from war, led companies and took corporations all over. So leadership then becomes far away from academic titles, as you have established here. Good heart, good vision, humility, grooming people, giving people opportunity to experiment and to grow. And that's all you need as a leader.
By so doing, having foresight, having an insight into the future, where does the organization want to get to, and defining that vividly and communicating it across to the team or the staff will pave way to you shaping a certain behavior towards the attainment of that goal.
It is important.
And also identifying talents that need to be developed and shape them towards the destination that the organization is heading to. Becomes a leadership responsibility.
It becomes a big responsibility. And for those of your viewers even interested in biblical stuff or so, look, the good book says that when you are a leader, have a vision and put it on a tablet that is set somewhere in Habakkuk, and share that and wait, because at the appointed time the vision will come to being. So if you don't have a vision, you don't put it down and share it amongst people. Because how are you going to move on?
So hold it there. Viewers, the phone lines are now open. You can reach and contribute to this discussion on 0531 982298. 0531 982298. If you are outside the shores of Ghana or anywhere else on the globe, just add plus 233 and you will reach us. Let's continue the conversation.
That's right.
Now, within the organizational space, a lot of things happen. Culture is defined largely by a lot of stakeholders.
Yes.
The leader, the ultimate leader, if you like, the CEO or the MD within a company, may have a vision, may have a certain approach to leading the organization. But there are other critical stakeholders like the shareholders, the board, and all that. How will such a person need to operate within that space in order to shape where everybody has an interest? Let me give a typical example where the board is interested in appointing certain particular or category of people into certain roles. But in the view of the CEO, those people may not be well qualified to occupy those roles because of his vision and what he might have described to the board. How should the CEO operate?
Oh my God, a very complicated scenario. But here is my take on that, because you don't have fixed answers for this.
All right, please hold it there. We have the first caller.
All right.
Just keep. Hello from Spinters. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to Leadership 360 program.
Thank you.
Your contribution, please.
Yes. First of all, I want to commend your guest. He was a mate of mine, and I seriously appreciate his capacity in that field. But then he had explained a point on the cultural specificity of leadership, and I just wanted him to maybe give some further explanation on how the taste of power can either weaken or embolden leadership depending on how the person was socialized growing up.
All right, thank you very much. Kwaku?
My man, good to hear your voice here. So he asked how one's upbringing can shape one's ability to navigate around the corridors of power. Holding power.
Exactly.
But you see, the power, as he knows, or as my viewers may know, is it's also broad. What type of power are we talking about?
Exactly.
Are we talking about administrative power or political power or an executive power? These are also issues he won't have the opportunity. So let me pick it, just the generic power.
All right.
No, so bottom line is that, number one, in leadership, nobody is born a leader. I think that must, at some point, I don't know whether you have exhausted that. We are all trained or groomed to be leaders. Of course, at the academic level, there is this long conversation whether leaders are born or leaders are made and all that. In fact, the conclusion, based on empirical research, is that nobody is born a leader. We are all groomed. So your background should not necessarily impact on your leadership as you grow, because we have said that culture is progressive.
Exactly.
And in fact, of all the cultural traits I depicted, the most important one is the progressive culture. Your background, whether you were born in my grandfather's village or born from wherever, leadership is a learning environment where once you get access to power, whichever power it is, you must have what we call the emotional intelligence to understand that, yes, this is transient. I am also a human being, and I don't control people's oxygen. Humility, learn and be humble.
All right.
Then you navigate around leadership.
All right.
Yes,
so
that's how
it's
it
not
is.
about necessarily where you are coming from.
Not at
you
all.
must be conscious of it, but at the same time know where you are going.
Perfectly.
And shape it accordingly.
That's right.
Hello, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
How is Tamale?
I'm fine. Tamale is okay. We are well and kicking.
All right.
My contribution is this. You know, leadership. Even leadership can be affected by the environment. So just like culture, it affects leadership. And leadership, if you observe, if you are born a prince, you are trained in the household. So before you grow up to become a king. So now, if we are, you know, last I told you, I'm an educationist. And we say that, that one of the definitions of education is transmission of culture from one generation to the other. And what is culture? Culture is the totality of the people. So if it is so, definitely, and then you have this culture, you know that the culture will actually, education start at home, and then you not in school, then when you follow it, definitely. So the school alone cannot train you. It's both the home and the school. The same apply to leadership. Leadership can be affected by the environment, like the current situation. Poverty can affect your leader, you as a leader, your administration.
All right. Thank you very much. You see, from Tamale. It's heartwarming having you on the program every now and then. The points you have made are so clear. We have established also on this program that indeed leadership and culture are so intertwined that one cannot go away with the other and you'll be fine. No, you cannot. So indeed, from home, where your background, the society you are coming from, the family you are coming from, the environment defines you largely, and you must be conscious of that as well. Kwaku, we'll come back to you. Yeah. Kwame, good afternoon from Kuperedia. Good afternoon, Kuperedia. Kwame.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Kwame.
Yes, you're speaking to Kwame.
Yeah, Kwame, good afternoon. You're welcome to the Leadership Institute. Please go ahead with your point.
Yeah. First of all, let me appreciate what you're doing there. I appreciate what you're doing there.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Please go ahead.
I want to appreciate what you are doing there.
Please lower the audio on your set. Yes.
You are
lower the audio on your set. We are having a feedback in the studio. All right, please proceed. Hello, Kwame. All right, I guess we have lost Kwame, so let's proceed. Mark, the gentleman, now let's go back to our original point before you, but I know you have just said something
yes,
down,
yes, yeah.
because I know viewers are waiting to hear your comments on that dilemma of a CEO who has to address the needs or the requirements of the board and his own needs.
Exactly.
What are your views?
Well, that was, for me, I said that was a very complex scenario he depicted, but it's real. It happens all the time. Number one is that, as you have said, there are too many stakeholders in a corporate environment. This is a standard corporate environment with the board, with the so on and so forth. Number one is that as a leader or the CEO or the MD or whoever, if the board,
sorry,
it's a corporate. All right.
I will disrupt you again. Let's give the opportunity to Loan from Tamale. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How is Tamale?
Tamale is fine.
Please go ahead with your contribution.
Yes, I'm just
want to thank your guests in the studio. That you are doing a very wonderful job. Well, you are really educating us very well. Thank you very much.
We are grateful. We need
more education for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are so grateful. It is the key purpose of this program is to share knowledge so that we can all learn, unlearn, and relearn.
That's right.
To accelerate our leadership drive. Because leadership is key to everything. That is why we are doing. Kwaku, please continue your point.
So the corporate governance, this is the foundation of the standard corporation you are depicting here. Corporate governance requires that as the metaphors in strategy, you learn to swim with sharks without being eaten by the sharks. If you were a leader or a CEO or an MD, the board, and you believe firmly in a project or in an issue, and the board has its own way, the board has its own mindset. Oh, no, let's hear them. Today. They like that. That's right.
From Akosombo, good afternoon. Amantin from Akosombo, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I hope you are fine too.
I'm very good.
All right, please, your point.
Yeah, I think the man in the studio is a very good human resource person. And one thing that I want to say is that, look, even at home, if you want your children to be better in life, you need to mentor them, you need to educate them to hold their future. Because if you are not alive, you don't do that and develop them, they become wanting.
All right. Thank you very much. It's leadership, I said, charity begins at home,
That's
as you
right.
say in Ghana. So everything you wish for the future, probably you have to start from home.
Exactly.
And so that's it. Please continue your point.
So you would require that as a CEO, if your board disagrees with you on an issue, then you must navigate around the terrain. You have to learn lobbying. I mean, this is something funny, but that is true. You must lobby the board members and explain to them. Lobbying in this case is not corruption. We are not talking corruption at all.
Yeah.
You must pull your board members off the noise and go to them and say, sir, A, B, C, D, begin to explain things. Begin to lobby and talk to people, talk to conscience. Look, the journalist, international journalist said.
All right. If you can just wrap it up.
Don't dictate
us.
to people, but just educate them.
Exactly.
Now, at worst also because of the pressure on us, if you were an MD, the board doesn't want you to do A, B, C, D. What do? Given all the environment, you must resign. At some point, people must learn to resign.
And that is selflessness.
And say goodbye.
Selflessness.
And give way for other people.
Exactly. So that your own comfort must always come last every time. And that leads us to the honor code we all pledge to or subscribe to on this program. Exactly. It's been amazing. Let's take our honor code.
I am a proud and firm African. I will take a stand. I will lead and be the change. Come and take my hand. For the safety, honor, and welfare of my country and company come first. Always and every time. The honor, welfare, and comfort of the people I lead come next. My own ease, comfort, and safety come last, always and every time.
It's been amazing. Today's show has been so insightful. Time will not allow us. We've come to the end so quickly, but key lessons we learned on this program today has to do with the fact that leadership and culture are so intertwined. We cannot downplay on any of them. In as much as leadership drives progress, culture drives that process as well. And we need to pay attention to culture anytime we talk about leadership. It's been amazing having you around. Kwaku, your submissions have been amazing for us. Cherished Words, it's exciting having you around. Next week, we're going to look at dynamics of leadership, where we'll have the legendary Captain Kofi Prince Amwabeng in studio. Don't lose it for anything. Don't miss it. Join us for that conversation. Bye.